The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Jalash Mallah, we've got a big show lined up on the program today, including more reaction from who Tennessee will take to SEC Media Days in Antarctica, I believe is where that's going to be. No, it's Dallas. Also, congratulations to Josh Heupel, who is named the Bobby Dodd Head Coach of the Year candidate. That's pretty cool. Tennessee's offensive line breakdown. I don't know that Tennessee's offensive line has to be great for Tennessee's offense to be great, in particular Nico Iamaleava. I just think they have to be healthy. Also, Arch Manning has found his way into the EA Sports game. Cost EA Sports a little bit of cash. And the topic I want to get into sooner rather than later is James Pearce not going to SEC Media Days. Also, Mike Gundy says he likes to drive around drunk, which was a strange take after one of his players got in trouble for that. Jimmy, that's usually a weird response when one of your employees gets busted for underage drinking and driving, and you say, "Oh, I've done that a million times."
I thought Gundy was a man. I thought he was over 40 years old. I thought he knew how to be a good role model or example to the kids that he's coaching. What a stupid comment to make. My goodness.
Yeah. Speaking of, I left out Caleb Calhoun. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you. I am also a man, but I'm still not yet as old as Mike Gundy was when he made that statement. So
you're getting there, and it's going to happen really soon. Jimmy, I'm going to dive into why I think that James Pearce should be at SEC Media Days a little bit later in the program, but there are some other things I want to get to with you today. But first, let me get your thoughts on the selection, in particular, not taking Nico Iamaleava and not taking James Pearce, who are definitely, not even close, the two most newsworthy players on Tennessee's football team.
Well, I get who they are taking. I understand that.
I agree.
Now, having said that, and now the one of them that would be the most questioned would be Keenan Pili. He's played one game at Tennessee. Is the media more interested in Nico than they are Pili or Cooper Mays or Amari Thomas? Yes. Are they more interested probably in James Pearce because he projects by some to be the number one pick in the NFL draft? Yes. Now, here's what I think. And Thomas has already been there. So I don't know that you needed to take him another year. I think that Nico should have gone just because I think there's a huge storyline. Are they trying to? But I think they're trying to honor the people that have been there for either the older statesmen, this is the last year for these guys. So I think that's a part of what their thinking was. But if you're looking from a media standpoint, you'd have more interest in Nico. You'd have more interest in Pearce. I think the reason Pearce is not going, I think maybe there's a character issue there. I know he had an arrest a while back. And I know that whenever people asked Josh Heupel about him being the number one pick of the draft, he said, well, now he needs to make sure, basically he was saying he shouldn't let that go to his head. He's got to perform. So I think there's more behind the scenes stuff going on with Pearce. As far as Nico, I think it's just, hey, we want to honor some seniors and we want to honor some people that'll be playing their last year. I think that's where they're coming from. But from a media perspective, I would rather have Nico and Pearce there.
Absolutely. Caleb, I think those are the two best storylines. And I love the Cooper Mays storyline because he plays a position he didn't get a lot of respect. But the two best storylines are definitely Nico and Pearce. There's no question about it.
Oh, absolutely they are. Jimmy, I suggested yesterday, this is why, and they would never do this, but it is SEC Media Days. The SEC offices host this for the media. It is our chance as the media to get the stories we want. I feel like we as the media, or the attendees of SEC Media Days, should get to vote on the players for each team that will attend SEC Media Days.
Kind of like baseball all-star game.
Yeah.
Yes,
Jimmy-
exactly.
Yeah.
Jimmy,
And tell at about the same time. So hey,
don't be
For the media
surprised. Jimmy's the type of person that can make that happen. No question about it. Let's get to today's tough question. We're going to change gears a little bit because congratulations to Josh Heupel in a designation or an honor, I guess you would call it, that he definitely deserves. Today's tough question is right now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, Caleb. So Josh Heupel is on the watch list for the Bobby Dodd Award, which goes to the top coach in the nation in college football. What did you make of him being on that list? I can't say that I was incredibly surprised.
I think it says he's one of the best coaches in the country, right? Go ahead, Caleb.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I think it's just I don't know how they come up with the 21 list for the Coach of the Year award, to be honest, because my history has been the coach. And Jimmy, I was wanting to get you on this. My history is typically the people they pick for Coach of the Year are coaches whose teams do well, that they didn't predict to do well. So it's oftentimes media members trying to cover for themselves for not properly researching teams beforehand.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing that's interesting about that is he's on a preseason list. Well, in my opinion, probably the worst year he had at Tennessee was last year. So even though I think he's a really good coach, I didn't think that was the best year that he had, and the way things worked out with Joe Milton. So, yeah, but a lot of times I think you're right, Caleb. It is a coach. Now you're typically going to have. I hadn't seen the list, so I'm sure Kirby Smart's on it. But you're going to have coaches. Sarkisian's going to be on it, I would think. You're going to have coaches that have succeeded at a high level. You're also going to have coaches that overachieve with the team. That would be a part of that equation. But I think they're kind of useless, right? I mean, so what?
These lists, you almost have to be, and to win it, you almost have to either be dominant or a surprise. That if you're just in the middle good, you're no good for us. You're not a good fit for this award, which is a little bit strange. If you had to predict a mortgage payment, Jimmy, is Josh Heupel going to win the Bobby Dodd Coach of the Year award before all is said and done?
I doubt it. There's so many other candidates out there. I mean, who knows? If he wins 11 games, he can win it. Anything short of that, he may not, because there's going to be somebody else that comes up with a huge season, right? So, I mean, just look at the odds. The odds would be against that. So I would say probably not.
I would actually probably argue the odds would be in his favor, if not for one guy, Caleb, named Kirby Smart. If not for him being there, I would say, given 10 years at Tennessee, I would take Josh Heupel to win that award as opposed to not.
I'm going to argue for him being there this year because I think, again, lack of research. I mean, when surprise teams is where Coaches of the Year happen. If Tennessee goes 11-1, plays for the SEC title, gets to the semifinals of the college football playoff, I think they'll vote Josh Heupel Coach of the Year. And I just want to float this to you two because you guys cover the team. Philip Fulmer got Coach of the Year in 1998, as you guys know. When I don't think it was the Bobby Dodd Coach of the Year. Bill Snyder got the Bobby Dodd Coach of the Year. Philip Fulmer got the other Coach of the Year award. I forget which one it was. Maybe it was the Bear Bryant award. Bear Bryant trophy.
Bill Snyder was mad about getting that award because he's mad about everything. But anyway.
My contention for the longest time about the 98 team, because it's considered the Cinderella team. They lost all this star power and went on to win the national title. That comes from national media that did not do their research on that Tennessee football team. Because, yes, Tennessee lost a lot of star power going into 98. But as you guys know, they had about 3 years worth of number one recruiting classes still on that team in 98. So they were still loaded with talent. And Fulmer got Coach of the Year because nobody in the national media had done any research on Tennessee behind Peyton Manning and Leonard Little for 3 years.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute. All right. Where was Tennessee ranked preseason that year?
13th.
10th.
Was it 13th?
Oh, I thought they were 13th, but maybe in 10th. Sorry.
They were 10. They were top 10. I predicted them to go 11-1, but I'm not national media, so I don't count. And I had them losing only to Florida. I thought they were a national championship caliber team, but I didn't think they could get past Florida because they hadn't for years, right? So And I don't know how many in the national media looked at it. I didn't think number 10 in the country was unreasonable for Tennessee, given that they lost 3 first-round picks. It was Manning, Terry Fair, and Marcus Nash, right? Those are the 3 first-round picks they lost.
Yes.
From that team. Okay. So to have them 10th in the country, I thought was reasonable, although I had them going 11-1. But I think when you lose a star power quarterback like that, I think that automatically gives people the perception you're not going to be as good the next year. And frankly, I didn't think they would be better than they were in 97. I mean, did y'all?
No. And I frankly am a little bit surprised you had them as high as 10th. I want to dive into that, brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety and great selection and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. High quality. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. Hooked for 10% off. Caleb,
that's crazy.
You're telling me you lose the best all-time quarterback in your history and you shouldn't be considered a bit of a long shot to win the national title? I would have them actually lower than 10th. We'll get to Jimmy's thoughts on that too. But Caleb, I mean, you lose the best player you've ever had.
But this is to the point. Jimmy was knee deep in the program, Jimmy. So you knew that, just real quick, Jimmy, you knew how loaded they were even with all the talent they lost, right?
I did. I mean, yeah. I had them higher than 10th. I'm saying the AP poll had them 10th preseason. I had them going 11-1. 11-1 would be higher than 10th in the country.
Oh, okay. Do you remember where you had them preseason by chance?
5 or 6.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
So
Go ahead. Go ahead, Caleb.
Where I was going with this was that, yeah, Jimmy was tied to the program, so he knew. National media did not do their research on how loaded that Tennessee team was, even with the talent they lost. And for those who don't remember, Vegas had Tennessee underdogs in 3 regular season games that year. Vegas had Tennessee underdogs at Syracuse, against Florida, and at Georgia. They had all 3 of those teams favored to win. And they had Tennessee underdogs against Florida State, which was one of the second worst line in Tennessee football history. So the worst line. That was ridiculous. Florida State had a back break.
Yes. I really thought Jimmy would agree with me on this point, but maybe he won't, because he did like the 98 team more preseason than I thought he would have, or that I did anyway. I guess I was putting thoughts in his mind, but I go back to that 98 team, and I think Philip Fulmer, it wasn't the media making up for overlooking him. I felt like he changed the whole offense with the help of David Cutcliffe, obviously, to benefit from T. Martin. I felt like he did a lot of things philosophically and from a big picture standpoint to motivate his team. Whereas this upcoming team, if Josh Heupel were to win the Bobby Dodd Award, I would think it was because they've been largely overlooked, because I think they've addressed some of their deficiencies, but people are unsure if those are the correct answers or not. Does all that make sense, Jimmy?
Yeah, and just going back to 98, I mean, Syracuse had a great quarterback named Donovan McNabb. Tennessee was lucky to get out of there. And T. Martin did not beat Syracuse with his arm. He beat him with his running ability. He ripped off a 64-yard run or something like that. Now, I had him losing to Florida, which they had to beat them in overtime. But and T. Martin did not have a good game against Florida either. He got better. But to your point, Dave, and I agree with this, I thought Tennessee did a really nice job of going from a great passing quarterback in Peyton Manning to a guy that could beat you with his legs. They did have to change the offense. They had a really good offensive line. They had a load of running backs. They had good receivers. But T. Martin was able to make key clutch plays to help them go undefeated. But remember, that team was very close to not going undefeated. They beat Syracuse on a last-second field goal. They beat Florida in overtime, and they were lucky to beat Arkansas, right? I mean, that team could have easily lost 3 games. But I did think to get back to Caleb's original point, they had stackpiled great recruiting classes back to back to back. And so I thought it was a very talented team, but I didn't think they'd win the national championship because I wasn't sure that T. Martin was good enough to do that.
Caleb has a thought he wants to share. Caleb, can you give me 15 seconds so I can tell everybody about Ray Varner Ford?
Go ahead.
There.
Big Bend 4x4, $29,743. A 2024 T250 low roof cargo van, $51,955. 24 model Ford F-150 4x4 crew cab, $46,929. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Great deals and selection to be had at Ray Varner Ford, Caleb.
So I agree with a lot of what you're saying, Jimmy, and they were lucky to escape. But you brought up the Arkansas game. If we were being honest about yes, Fulmer and Cutcliffe did a great job retooling the offense that all season. As a matter of fact, I read something where they actually took the red jersey off T. Martin that year because they wanted him to get hit in practice.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And they might have beat the hell out of Joey Matthews to the point that he couldn't play football anymore, but that's another.
and T wasn't crazy about that move, by the way.
No, T wasn't crazy about that move, and the Matthews family shouldn't have been crazy about that move because I watched that kid play quarterback in high school. He could play, but goodness gracious, that spring put him through. And if you remember too, Jimmy, that was before a lot of guys came in for spring practice. So it was a shock.
So where I met, though, it's funny. You mentioned the Arkansas game. If we were going to be honest about the coach of the year in 1998, Houston Nutt was the coach of the year in 1998, what he did with that Arkansas team. I think going 9-3 with that Arkansas team was far more impressive than winning a national title with that Tennessee team, if you compare the talent levels of the two.
What hurt Arkansas is they lost their last 3 games. If you had voted when they were 9-0 and ranked in the top 10, I would agree with you. It's tough for me to have a coach of the year who loses the last 3 games.
That's good.
And I will say, Houston Nutt didn't have to call a counter run play when all you have to do is run out the clock. That would have made my football IQ list of dumb coaching decisions. Yes, if it was around today.
Yeah.
That was a pretty special moment. On our poll question, if you want to take part of that, we'd love for you to do that. And the poll question is pretty simple. Plays off yesterday's topic. Would you rather hear from Nico or James Pearce at SEC Media Days? Nico with 66% of the vote. Pearce with 34% of the vote as we roll on, talking some Tennessee offensive line. And Caleb and I have drawn some criticism, Jimmy, in that we look at Tennessee's offensive linemen, and the really good ones seem to be non-Heupel guys, and the guys that are struggling to have an impact seem to be Heupel guys. Are we wrong? Are we being negative there? Or is there something to that as you see the early stages, not really early anymore, but of Heupel's recruiting?
Well, I'm singing your tune. One of my biggest criticisms of the Heupel program has been their inability to develop offensive linemen, that they recruited. Who are they? Who are the really good ones? I mean, if you look at the best offensive linemen they've had, Cooper Mays was a Jeremy Pruitt guy. If you go back to Darnell Wright, that was pre-Heupel. If you go back to Jerome Carvin, that was pre-Heupel. Their best offensive linemen have been players that were not recruited under Heupel. And so I don't know why that has happened. They have actually signed some offensive linemen that had pretty good ratings. Addison Nichols comes to mind. He was a pretty good 4-star offensive lineman. He's not even in the program now. I think that's one of the biggest issues, and I don't have a good explanation for why that is, but the facts are indisputable in that regard. I will also add this, and I've said this since he got here. You don't have to have a great offensive line to have a great offense in this system. It masks, in my opinion, the fact that you might be average on the offensive line, because the way they run up tempo, they typically have somewhat of an advantage in the box. If you got 6 in the box, you got 5 blockers, that's to your advantage, okay? But also, has Tennessee not struggled in short yardage situations? Because their offensive line can't blow people off the ball. But I agree to the point that offensive linemen recruited under Heupel's watch have not developed typically into really good players, and I don't have a good answer for that.
Me either, Caleb.
Yeah, I've wondered the same thing, and this has been just a larger overall red flag about talent evaluation in general. Jimmy, I do want to ask a little bit though, because I somewhat disagree about the idea that they don't have to be really good. I just think it's what they have to be good at. I do think that interior linemen have to have a higher IQ than a lot of other interior linemen in other systems, because I think they have to understand leverage and blocking schemes and I guess directional blocking. I equate it to, do you remember the Tom Moore, Peyton Manning offense with the Colts that was so successful for years. Jeff Saturday wasn't like a blow you away great interior blocker that was going to win battles, but he understood, stretch plays, zone blocking, things like that to give Peyton just enough time to get rid of the ball or to allow Edgerrin James or Joseph Adai just to hit that hole on the outside. It's more vertical for Tennessee. There's no stretch run plays, but I think they have to. That's why I think Cooper Mays is so valuable. He understands he understands directional blocking probably better than anybody Tennessee's had in a long time.
I agree with that. Yeah. You just have to get in the way. If you get a hat on a hat, the way they run that offense, the running backs will dart past you. You don't have to be a great drive blocker. You don't have to knock somebody 7 yards into the backfield like Trey Smith would do. All you got to do is engage and just make sure he doesn't throw you away quickly, the defender, because the running back's going to shoot through that hole. And that's what I think made Jalen Wright so good and the other running backs that Tennessee has had under Heupel. So and what I'm saying on that also is, other than Darnell Wright and maybe Cooper Mays, these are not NFL offensive linemen. These are not road graders. These are guys that do need to be smart, and they just need to make sure they block the right guy, get a hat on a hat, and if they do that, the run game is going to be successful.
An interesting point. Another thing that I have noticed with Josh Heupel's recruiting lately, and maybe this attributes to the fact that he hasn't had guys that have been big time contributors on the offensive line so far. It seems to me, and with the Sanders kid, the David Sanders kid, and some other guys that they are recruiting, they're going after guards and tackles. They're not going after offensive linemen. They're going for the stout, tough, strong guys at guard, and they're going for the more mobile guys at tackle. That's something that I have noticed from watching tape. Jimmy, I think that's by design. I think that fits Heupel's offense. Whereas if a 4-star knocks on your door and you're at Tennessee last year or a couple of years ago, you take his phone call no matter what position he plays on the offensive line.
Yeah. And I think the mobility part is the one thing, because in this scheme where you spread people out and you have wider splits on your offensive line, you do need to have mobile offensive linemen. So I think they would rather have a 280-pound tackle that's mobile than a 310-pound tackle who's just a road grader and can only block straight ahead. So I think that is a part of their philosophy. And you know what? It's worked, because Tennessee. Yeah. I mean, did anybody really think Tennessee had a great offensive line last year? But who led the SEC in rushing? Tennessee. And they've been up there for 3 years in a row among the leaders in the SEC in rushing. And I think it has more to do with the scheme than having a great offensive line.
It's funny you bring that up, guys. I mean, just as the group, Caleb, you too. As a group, considering Cooper Mays' injury, that was a C or C- offensive line. Considering the injury, am I wrong there?
I mean, I think the offensive line cost them the Florida game. I mean, it was because Cooper Mays was hurt. Yes.
C- Jimmy, am I off there?
No, I think the same thing. I don't think Tennessee has a great offensive line, but they don't need to be great. They need to be competent. But
Jimmy, you also remember when Cooper was banged up in the 2021 season, and Hendon Hooker, he got sacked. I think was like 4th in the nation in most times sacked that year in 2021, despite him being very, very good and us all thinking he was very good. I remember writing a lot in 2022 talking about, Hendon because Hooker's pocket presence was horrible in 2021. And I wrote a lot about how improved it was in 2022. And then I look back now and I'm like, was it really improved, or was it just Cooper Mays was healthy and that changed the entire offensive line?
Well, another part is I thought Darnell Wright had a great year. I didn't think Darnell Wright was great until his senior year. And I thought he was terrific last year. So I think that was a part of it. Cooper Mays was a part of it. Maybe another part of it was the offensive linemen actually learning the system that they wanted. I'm not sure that they could all gather the information they wanted or gel that first year as a group. So I think all those things were part of it. But I thought Hooker made significant improvement between his 2021 season and 22.
I tried. Cooper said he struggled still with just the athletic aspect of it. from year to year. I mean, that's a massive change going from running 50 plays to 90 plays. I look at one player in particular. We have not mentioned his name. That is a very key player for Tennessee's offensive line. I remind you, the show is represented by Banks and Jones. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Jimmy, I went on my little diatribe about how Tennessee's able to go after tackles and guards now instead of just offensive linemen, and that's better for the program, and that all sounds well and good, but that should be accurate for center as well. And if something were to happen to Cooper Mays, based off who I've talked to, I don't think Bison Lang's ready to go, and I think you'd have a lot of shifting around. We haven't mentioned Bison Lang's name yet, but why is he not ready to play at center? Because that's a position, it's mental, it's fundamentals, it's not as physically demanding. He should be ready to go, and I've been told he's not.
Did he play center in high school?
He did play center in high school, I believe.
I don't know that. I'm asking that out of ignorance. Yeah. I don't really know if he did. I don't think it's a real easy position to play. I think Cooper Mays, who played center in high school for multiple years, he's also very intelligent. He's probably the smartest offensive lineman that they have. I think it requires a skill set and an intelligence level that makes it difficult. I don't think you can just take a guard or a tackle and move him to center and say, oh, okay, we're all right there. In particular, not in this offense, which does require a high IQ. So I don't know if Lang played much center in high school. I don't know many offensive linemen on their team that played much center in high school. But I'll go back to what Caleb said about he thinks that Tennessee lost the Florida game because Cooper Mays wasn't there. If Mays goes down, this team's in trouble because I don't think there is a center that can come in. Now, I think it could be mitigated a little bit. Joe Milton could mitigate things because, in my opinion, he didn't fit the system. Nico does. So Nico would be able to make more plays, I think, in this system. But if you don't have Mays, man, they're in trouble on offense. They will not be nearly as productive as I'm predicting. And my prediction is they're going to average 38 to 40 points a game. They won't do that if they don't have Cooper Mays.
I agree. And Caleb, for the record, Lang played tackle, listed as a tackle coming out of high school, but they immediately moved him to center, so they at least had that plan in place. I wanted to get everybody updated on that. Go ahead.
So, Jimmy, elephant in the room here that we haven't brought up because we're talking about blocking. I want to get to pass blocking for a second. Cooper Mays getting hurt is a problem on its own. Another problem, though, and I want to know your thoughts on this, is I don't think Tennessee has a running back yet that can be a feature back and pick up pass pro. I don't think Dylan Sampson's ever going to be big enough to be able to pick up pass pro and be a feature back. Khalifa Keith isn't athletic enough to be a feature back. I don't trust Cam Selden's vision. I've seen too many mistakes he's made on obvious. He's got Trent Richardson level vision to me. So if Peyton Lewis doesn't step in at running back this year and work out, Tennessee's got a big problem there for pass pro, don't they?
Yeah. Now, I'll say this. I didn't think Jalen Wright was a very good pass protector when he first got to Tennessee. He was also willing to gain, about 30 pounds? And he put on a lot of weight. He was a high school sprinter. He was a little bit undersized weight-wise, a little bit like Dylan Sampson. But then he ended up being, 212, 215?
Power back almost.
Yeah. So, and I haven't seen that out of Sampson. So to the point about a running back being really good in pass protection, I think that is a problem. Now, how do you coach around that? Do you keep a tight end in to help block? Do you have an H-back to help in pass protection? I don't know. You're going to have to scheme around it. But to that point, I think Tennessee does have an issue with pass protection among running backs. It's not to say they can't improve dramatically from last season to this season, but going into this season, I think that is a concern.
Jimmy, you said Cooper Mays is the most important out of the three of the players that will go to SEC Media Days, and I agree with that. Amari Thomas and Keenan Pili are the other two. However, I will say this. I think the statement made from Tennessee's football program is that Keenan Pili is one of their MVPs of this season. I'm not going to compare him to Mays because I haven't seen him enough to be able to do that.
Right.
But I think they're sending you a statement that he's going to be able to handle all of the line calls, or all of the defensive front calls, I should say. He's going to be able to get people lined up in the secondary. He's going to be able to do all of that. And the players really, really, really believe in him, or he wouldn't be going in the first place. He may not be the MVP, but he's pushing for MVP status based off that decision to send him to Dallas.
He was voted a team captain after spring practice. That tells you the leadership ability that he has. And I think he's going to have a huge year if he can stay healthy. But I would compare a little bit of that. If Mays goes down, I think the offense suffers. If Pili goes down, the defense suffers. Is there another middle linebacker that can step in and do that? Could it be Jeremiah Thielander? I don't know. But I don't think they have great depth at linebacker. I think they have some pretty good athletes there that are still learning how to play the position. So if Pili goes down, I think that's a big blow. And him being the guy that calls the signals on defense, being the leader, I think that would be it would make it tough on this defense. Now, I love Tennessee's defensive line, not just the ability of the starters, but their depth. It's one of the deepest defensive lines I've seen at Tennessee. At linebacker, not so much. So if Pili goes down, I think that's a huge blow to the defense.
Last thing, Jimmy. A better coaching job would be Tennessee, of course, winning the 1998 national championship, or if they won it in 2024 this year, a better coaching job would be. And try to put yourself in the mindset, if you can, take me back a couple of years, where you're before the season, and I know you liked them, but you're thinking to yourself, it's still Peyton Manning that's gone to the NFL.
Yeah. No, I didn't think the 98 team would win a national championship. Okay. But I did have them going 11-1. I don't have this team going 11-1. I got this team going 9-3. I also don't think that the talent on this team is really nearly as good as the 98 team. Look at all the draft picks, the NFL players off that 98 team. So if they win a national championship this year, it would be a considerably better coaching job than was done in 1998.
Good stuff. Jimmy, thank you as always, sir. We appreciate it. Brought to you by Ray Varner Ford. We will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Caleb. Y'all have a great day.
Have a good one, Jimmy.
Way better. Way better. I think we'd have to look at some of that in 5 years and say, how did these players develop? But I tend to agree right off the bat that there's not as many first-round picks and longtime NFL players on this team, Caleb, as there ended up being on the 1998 team. It's hard to predict that, but I think I'm right there.
I agree. Part of the factor
Can I
that
play a game with you? Can I play a game with you?
Sure.
Okay. Could Brew McCoy be Peerless Price?
Physically, yes, but Peerless Price has an intangible that can't be matched. I mean, there's an intangible to Peerless Price's game.
Tend to agree with that, but I'm only about 60-40. Okay. Could, and I mean, as a prospect, not what happened in the NFL, could any of the defensive backs be Dwayne Goodrich and get drafted in the second round to replace Deion Sanders?
No. Or by the way, don't forget Deion Grant was in that secondary. Could any of them be Deion Grant?
I'm not done. I can keep going. Anyway, there's at least 8 guys that I could pick out, and I don't see people of that ilk on this team. Who knows?
There's an insane variable. There's a big variable that makes this different, though. 2 big variables. One, there's 2 different types of coaching jobs. As you know, Dave, when you recruit at Tennessee's level in the 90s, the ability to coach in Tennessee did this in 98 is how well you adapt to the talent you have each year, right? How well you adapt to your personnel. And what David Cutcliffe is the greatest adapter to personnel in the history of coaches. Is he not?
Pretty good.
Okay. There's that, but then there is having a system and just so happening to have the perfect player for that system. Does that mean better coaching? I don't know. But that's Tennessee this year, because I'm not going to say if you take T. Martin or Nico Iamaleava as a prospect, but would you take T. Martin with what David Cutcliffe was able to do with him, or Nico Iamaleava in Josh Heupel's system? And I think Nico in Josh Heupel's system could outweigh every other talent advantage Tennessee had in the 90s.
I'm gonna have to get that. Like that's That's a whole night worth of thought that I would have to give to that question. Sometimes you give me things that I can come back with in a second, sometimes 60 seconds, sometimes 30 minutes. What you just asked is a night's worth of thought. Rick Terry Jewelry Design, there's no thought that you have to put into that because they want to be your jeweler. Rick Terry Jewelry Design, look over my shoulder right here. They've got those awesome pendants. They got the Power T pendant. They got the State of Tennessee pendant. And they got the Power T cufflinks. They're awesome. We'll be giving away prizes thanks to our good friends as we officially unveil the chase for 8. That's right. 8,000 subscribers. That's what we're shooting for. Just a little over 5,000 now. And when we get to that point, if you're subscribed to the channel and you're a member of our Hooker's Corner page, which if we can put a link there, that would be great, Caleb. You don't have to be a paid member. You just have to be a free member, and you can be a part of Rick Terry's Garmin 8, and you can win a Garmin watch that is super, super awesome. So make sure you are subscribed. Hit the like and subscribe button right now to go ahead and get that out of the way. And then Caleb's going to have the sign up for Hooker's Corner right there for you that you can become a member. And that way, we're going to create an email list so we can send you out the good stuff that we come across each and every day. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. Coming up, is there something to the fact that you get suddenly James Pearce not going to SEC media days, staying away from the media? You don't hear about him in a lot of NIL. And then you have Archie Manning trying to get some more cash for EA Sports. A lot going on. Stay tuned. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This is a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Big Ben 4x4, $29,743. A 2024 T250 low roof cargo van, $51,955. 24 model Ford F-150 4x4 crew cab, $46,929. Ray Warner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
So we talked on the program today how Tennessee doesn't have to have an elite offensive line to still be a championship team. We've also discussed how if Josh Heupel wins the Bobby Dodd Award, it's because they've won a national title, which Caleb has said he thinks is possible, and the media will have overlooked him, which I agree with Caleb. I think the Dodd Award goes to either the most dominant coach or the most overlooked coach before the season. Yet Brandon's saying that I'm digging up stuff. I mean, come on. Digging it. I think everything's been incredibly positive on the program today. But we'll talk about James Pearce a little bit later, not going to SEC Media Days. But this, now, Caleb, I got to blame you for this one. You wanted to do what the H on this. To me, this is this should be called par for the course.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Is Arch Manning going to be in the EA Sports game?
Yes, he is. Arch Manning has reversed course and decided he will be on the EA Sports game. Decided that. Came out yesterday that he reversed course.
That's crazy.
Do you want to know what this is about?
I'm ready.
Let's throw some guesses out there. What is everything about?
Well, there's a report on what you're saying from Nick Schultz of On 3, which is that sounds like he was throwing a decent bit of money.
He's throwing
beyond
a significant amount of money. And I can tell you that some Tennessee players did not opt in for the, what is it, $600, $300, whatever it is that every player gets.
Yep.
I can tell you one player I said, with all the NIL that you guys get, I was visiting with a player and I said, does that $350 from EA Sports even mean anything? He goes, and I ain't going to be in that game for that much money. He was not going to accept that. He got 4 digits, and this is not a superstar player. The EA Sports wants everybody to think that they're getting the same amount of money. Well, I'm sorry. You're not getting the same amount of money. So the Manning family, who, whether you like Nico more or whether you like Arch more, Arch is worth more money because of his last name. There's no way they were going to take even the best deal offered to any other college football player. They wanted the absolute 110% best deal, not even close, or you can leave him off the game and we don't care. That's exactly where the Mannings came from, and I knew it the moment that he said he wouldn't be in it. It was all about money. So you can like Peyton Manning if you want to, because he's done a lot for the university, and I do think that he loves the university. But the simple fact is that's a business-minded family, period.
What you said, I would have no problem with. If Arch Manning wanted to hold out for more money, I'm with you. Do it if you can. However,
and I want to be clear, too, I don't have a problem with it either.
Yes. Arch Manning's a liar. And here's what, and I don't mean with the whole backing out of the game and coming back in. This is actually, there's another level of despicable to this that really rubs me the wrong way, Dave. Arch Manning, when he arrived at Texas, so last year he says he's not, or earlier this year he says he's not going to be on the NCAA sports football game because he wants to focus on football. You and I know that made no sense. You don't have to do anything to be on the game. That's not going to impede your focus on football.
No, they don't ask the freshmen that aren't playing to put on those bubble suits and run around.
Yes, exactly. So, so Arch, so that made no sense. I didn't know what it was about. It seemed like it was an attention grab. But Arch Manning going into last year, Dave, said that he was not going to take any NIL money until he was a starter because he wanted to earn it.
Yeah, I was wondering if you'd remember that. I like it.
He is putting out a fake narrative about himself that is so annoying because I did not like it when he did that. Because look, I get it on principle. If you want to be like, I'm the Manning family, I don't need this money. If you want to say give it to someone who deserves it, fine. That's a lie. You know, Dave, that advertisers aren't going to give that. If they don't give Arch Manning the money, it's not like they're going to give it to another player on Texas, right? Like they're giving it to Arch because
they're probably split. I'd say there's some that want to support Texas, and then there's the Walmarts that they just want the money to be effective in an ROI perspective.
Right. That's what I mean. I guess that's what I meant. It's not like the endorsement deals that Arch rejects from like Walmart or Nike or wherever. It's not like they would be like, well, let me go take this rando Texas player over here for it. They wouldn't do that.
It's not like State Farm said, we really need to look out for Caitlin Clark because she's a female playing a sport. Yeah. They didn't do it to be nice. They did it because they thought they'd get a good return on investment.
Yes. So he does that. I thought that kind of despicably showed up a lot of players on Texas who were taking NIL money. And a lot of players, it almost made you, when you publicly announce that statement, you then make players who are trying to push for NIL money, who may not come from as privileged backgrounds, you're making them seem like you're just adding a layer that they may be a little
money grubs, taking advantage of the system. Which you and I agree with the system. Okay, so I don't want anybody to mishear us. But yes, taking advantage of the system, money grubs, carpetbaggers, maybe even. That may be a little strong, but along those lines.
And this is what is so. And this is something the Manning family has done for a while to create narratives. I'm going to go back and tell you guys this. I have no insight on this whatsoever. I could ask Jimmy about it. He would probably disagree. John Adams would disagree. I don't believe for 1 second Peyton Manning stayed till the senior season because he just wanted to go back to college. I believe Peyton Manning stayed until the senior season because he did not want to get drafted by the Jets, and his family was going to do everything they could to finagle him not getting drafted by the Jets because they knew that was the most incompetent organization in the history of organizations at the time.
Okay, you mentioned that before, but let me ask you this. Do you think they knew he would be the #1 draft pick, so they had that leverage? Yes. Because that's usually that's a lot more of a drastic move than, say, Eli saying, I'm not going to play for the Chargers, which he did.
Well, think about this with Eli.
Nobody said Peyton was overrated, I don't think, Kyle.
Peyton didn't want the smoke of trying to finagle his way out of a place, so he said, let's stay another year and hope a better team, better organization drafts me. You know this, Dave. The Manning family was very involved on going to the right organization. The year Eli did the same thing Peyton did. Remember, he could have gone out after 2002, decided to stay till his senior year. Who had the #1 draft pick in 2003? The Bengals. I think the Bengals are another incompetently run organization. Eli Manning did not want to be stuck in that hellhole, so he said, I'm going to come back for my senior year and see if a better franchise has the #1 draft pick the next year. Unfortunately for him, a worse franchise got the #1 draft pick the next year. So that's when they finagled their way out of San Diego. Now, part of this is, look, I want to be fair to them on this. Arch Manning, Dave, or not Arch, Archie Manning. Archie Manning was a victim of playing for the most incompetent franchise in NFL history, wasn't he?
Yes, he's drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers still win 4 Super Bowls.
Exactly. He did not want his kids to. He knew the NFL. I'm sure he did not want his kids to go to really bad situations. I don't blame him on that. But Peyton created this narrative of, oh, Peyton just loved college and he did the moral thing of going back and graduating. Does that make players who leave early any less?
No.
Does that make Eric Berry less than?
No. But I wouldn't throw you threw morality into it. I wouldn't. I think the fact that he has that background allowed him to enjoy college. I don't think it's a morality thing. I just think that, hey, I mean, let's face it. Who wouldn't want to go? Some of us had a lot of fun in college. If their parents could pay for it, who wouldn't want to be a doctor one day?
Yeah, no, I get that. Yes.
We've seen Animal House, Caleb. Those were fun times.
Yes, totally agree. But
now, I don't understand why on our message board, though, there's this discussion of Peyton is overrated. You said he's better than Tom. What? No, we haven't
said that way up. One person on the message board said it. One person on the message board said it. I can't find it.
Well, we don't think that. You said he's better than Tom Brady. Now, I'll say this, too. Somebody else started something on the message board. See, something you guys, I got to watch you. Sometimes you're good and you start good stuff. Other times you're like, this is out of left field. The other one was out in left field. This one's pretty good. How would Peyton Manning be in today's NFL? Or in Josh Heupel's offense? We don't have time to do this, and maybe this is a full segment tomorrow. But let me just ask you that real quick, Caleb.
I think the Tennessee quarterback before Peyton Manning and the Tennessee quarterback after Peyton Manning would both be better in Josh Heupel's offense than Peyton Manning would. I think they're better fits. I still think Peyton Manning would be better.
You mean no matter who they would be?
No. I think Heath Schuler and T. Martin would both be better in Josh Heupel's offense than Peyton Manning. Now, I think Peyton Manning would be better in the NFL than those still. I think even in today's game, he's a Hall of Famer in the NFL.
Even though the NFL is more quarterback run oriented than it has been in the past, you still think it's enough pass oriented that he's good.
The thing that hurts Peyton Manning in the NFL today is the advantages he had over every quarterback is neutralized because the NFL changed the rules to give every quarterback that advantage. Whereas only Peyton Manning had that advantage in the 90s because he was so smart. Peyton Manning kind of with the tempo, the quick release, things like that to avoid getting hit. Well, now the NFL just said, let's change the rules completely to make sure none of the quarterbacks ever get hit. And that's a big advantage.
I'll tell you what, can we do this tomorrow? Because I think, I'm going to go ahead and say it, and we'll talk about tomorrow. I think with the advantage of the headset earpiece that they're going to have,
that would help Peyton. And
I think the fact that tempo is a thing that he could handle better than most, I think he'd be still a 2-time Super Bowl champion. I think he just might be a multiple national championship winner in a Josh Heupel offense. I know you might think I'm crazy. We'll discuss it tomorrow, but coming up, I got to get to the James Pearce situation. He's not going to SEC Media Days. Now, you give me your last take here on this. I know you wanted to weigh in on one little thing. Go for it.
So do you think of all of this, do you think this is just agree with me that this is a crappy move by Arch Manning to pretend that I'm not taking NIL money and show up Texas players and then hold out?
The one thing I would disagree with you, and he's a man, so maybe you're right. Once you're 18, you're supposed to be a man, but in our society, you're really not until you're like 22, 25. Somebody's telling him to do it. He didn't come up with this idea himself. So I guess I kind of defend him a little bit for being a young person who's probably being steered to make certain decisions. But you're right. As a whole, the Manning family, it's wrong.
Well, they're screwing things up now. And just the last point I want to make is this is the second time the Manning family has gotten caught creating a narrative for themselves where it's blatantly obvious in an unfair way, in a crappy way. Because the first time was, as we know, Peyton Manning agreeing to do Jimmy Haslam's bidding to push for the Greg Schiano hire so he could get hired so he could become an NFL owner.
If you want to write Manning narratives, I can be your Stephen King tomorrow. I mean, there are a lot of them out there, some of which you may not even know are narratives. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. In 2 minutes, the way I would have handled the James Pearce situation. Also, Mike Gundy and his very odd DUI comments. Apparently, that's not a thing anymore. We get upset about some things in our society, like drinking and driving, and then it goes away. I don't know what's next. By the way, I'm going to steal this from Norm Macdonald for a second. Is anybody surprised that the whole DD thing didn't take off? Who gets a phone call from their friends and says, hey, can you come pick us all up, drive us around? We're going to get drunk and you can't drink and then you have to drive us home. Does anybody like that idea? Have you ever done that before, Caleb?
No.
2 minutes on those sports.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Experience it all at Ray Varner Ford in Clinton. Need a quick fix or maintenance? Visit our Quick Lane Tire and Auto Center. Keep your Ford running smoothly with the experts in our service department. Ready for your next Ford? Our sales team is here to guide you to this 24 Ford Bronco Sport Big Bend 4x4, $29,743. A 2024 T250 low roof cargo van, $51,955. 24 model Ford F-150 4x4 crew cab, $46,929. Local you trust, experience you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win. banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Caleb, I have a very important job for you to do today if you will accept the responsibility.
What's the job?
Okay. You can call out me, even in your whiny English voice that you do. And you can say, no, you're upset that Pearce and Nico aren't going to media days because you wanted to interview them. And you're not really arguing that Pearce should have gone to clear up that legal issue that he had. So if I at any point sound whiny, you just got to call me out and say, Dave, stop it. Okay. Fair enough.
Dave, even if I called you out on that, I would agree with you. Like I said, it's SEC Media Days. It should be who the media wants there for their stories.
Thank you. And I'll do the same if you sound whiny, because see, that's what the media gets accused of a lot, is being whiny. Well, we're whiny because we're fighting for your rights, because we're the conduit between fans and the team that you love. So if you get mad at us for fighting for you, then I don't know what to tell you. I know that she'll fight for you. I know that she's Medicare Misty, and I know she does it for free because she absolutely makes sure that you make the right decision when it comes to Medicare. What I would have done with James Pearce in 30 seconds.
19 years this year. Well, I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
We'll do it.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
James Pearce should be at SEC Media Days. We can make an argument about Nico not playing much, doesn't hold a lot of water, because Keenan Pili's going to be there, and he's played even less than Nico. But at least Keenan Pili's 47 years old, so he's mature enough to handle it, which again doesn't hold water because I think Nico is mature beyond his years. But he's a freshman. Well, they don't take freshmen. Well, they did in 2000 with Jared Lorenz in Kentucky. Nico should be there and Pearce should be there, but Pearce should be there more. Pearce would have an opportunity to sit down and say, I want to discuss that traffic incident in which I was supposedly disrespectful of police. I want to apologize. It was not my intention to do that. I'm making this statement because I didn't have to. Don't care if I was asked about it or not, but it's the right thing to do. Caleb, that would make that man millions of dollars in next year's NFL draft.
I agree. And if you want to say the Nico thing because they don't want freshmen going, fine. But you drive a great point with James Pearce. And it almost seems like they're trying to. Now, you and Fred White said this last year. I think you meant it differently, but it does seem like they're just trying to bubble wrap him and like just praying that he doesn't get in any more trouble before this season ends. And then they could say, fine, go on your merry way. We don't care. We just need what you can do for us on the football field this year.
Coop here. First down.
Are they afraid of what James Pearce might say at SEC Media Days?
Yes. I think they were upset about Joe Milton's "I don't lose in Florida" comment last year. It sucks for us, but they don't like. They're not like Nick Saban, the whole one voice. I'm the voice of the program, and no voices. But they want players to have a voice, but they don't want them doing anything that ruffles any feathers at all.
Fair. All right, Coop, what down?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Are you concerned that James Pearce runs afoul of team discipline before the end of this season, which we would think would be his last?
Yes. And this player is nowhere near as good as James Pearce, but there was another player who had a run-in with the law and went at police, and he was named Jeremy Banks. And Jeremy Banks literally sabotaged the Tennessee football program in a college football playoff appearance because he decided to get into a fight with the Heisman candidate at quarterback out of reportedly anger that he wasn't making as much NIL money.
My take with Pearce is I'm concerned for two reasons. One, I think when you are disrespectful of police, and I'm well aware that, especially with minorities, that's a different topic, and there have been incidents that we could discuss that have been unfair with minorities. I understand that, but when you're disrespectful of police, then I think there's an undercurrent of mistrust, which it doesn't matter whose fault it is, Caleb, it could end up biting you in the rear. You know, whether it's your fault or their fault, it doesn't matter. It could bite you in the rear. So that's my concern. And the other thing is I've been told that he's a little wild, a little out there, and that is a concern. That's not to say he won't make it through the year. I hope he does. I hope everything's great. I hope he's the first pick in the NFL draft because he seems like a fine young man, but there is that concern. Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right. If you had a bet that he's an All-American or that he's a guy that's suspended for more than one game this year, what would you bet on? I'll go ahead and tell you, I'll bet an All-American. I think this is a concern. I don't think it's a huge concern.
Yeah, I'll bet All-American. As far as the James Pearce traffic incident, I think the biggest reason he didn't comply with police is because he couldn't and he didn't want to admit it. They wanted his tags, they wanted his proof of insurance. He refused to show it. That tells me he just didn't have it. So I think he refused to comply because he didn't have the choice to comply because.
Well, there's also a point where they said, now this is where it gets kind of weird. And again, I know the police reports can be weird. Okay. And I know that they can be vague and they can be unclear, but he was supposedly asked to stand with a cop while another cop went through his car and then he left. That to me, if I'm a police officer, especially a guy that's probably more physically gifted than me, I worry about being put in danger. You know what I mean? If I tell a guy,
and that also makes me question his intelligence to a certain degree. And I hate to bring that up because I got to say this, guys. Okay, and I agree. If we want to have the talk about like the tension with minorities and police, if that's true, and if James Pearce believes it's true, well, maybe rule number one then is don't run away from them. Right? Like even if you're concerned about what they'll find in your car, I've covered a lot of crime cases and people run from the police state for the stupidest reasons. They'll run over unpaid child support. They have a little bit of weed in their car and they don't want to get caught, anything like that. If you get caught with that stuff, you lose a night in jail. If you run from the police, you might lose your life.
Definitely, I mean, I would think you definitely lose 30 days that you're going to be. I mean, at the very least, don't people get 29 days for that or whatever it is?
There's nothing James Pearce could have had in his car short of a murder weapon used to kill somebody, which I don't believe he had.
Tyler Smith had a gun that had the registration scratched off, and he didn't go to prison.
Yes, exactly. So there's nothing you could have found in his car short of that would be worse than him running away. I mean, I'm just thinking again. Unless you have evidence that could lock you up, like of you as a serial killer, you shouldn't run from the police.
If you're Ricky Bobby and you got, a pound of the Colombian Bang Bang strapped underneath your car and a cougar in there, you better take off and go. But other than that, you need to pull over.
Exactly. I don't think James Pearce had a cougar in the back seat.
Now, Smoky Mountain Red asked this: how is this public speaking? That might be one reason he isn't going to the NFL, which actually that's very, very.
You mean media days? Not the NFL.
What did I say?
You said he's not going to the NFL.
Sorry. I got mixed up because Smoky Mountain Red read my mind.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
How is his public speaking? That might be one reason he's not going to media days. It might be. I haven't heard him talk, but my argument would be, you push people, not force, but you push people, you encourage people to do things that might be outside of their realm of being comfortable in. And this might be one of those things, and this would make him a better NFL prospect. And in the end, isn't that part of Josh Heupel's job is to make for the best NFL prospects he can? And part of that speaking in front of public and being able to convey your thoughts and your emotions without losing it.
Yes. And James Pearce is an edge rusher.
Not that Cougar Smoky Mountain Red. Go ahead.
Luckily for Tennessee, if your edge rusher isn't a great public speaker, it's not a big deal. You know what I mean? That's not a guy I need to like. If your middle linebacker or your quarterback is not a great public speaker, you got a problem, right? That's a really big problem. But
yeah, and Kyle says along those lines, maybe he was just scared. And if he was and he opted out of this, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But I don't believe that's the case based off what I've been told.
I think they are covering for James Pearce in a way that, yeah, we talked about them shielding Nico yesterday. I think they're shielding Nico because Nico found himself at the center of a lawsuit that took down the NCAA, and he never wanted any of that type of controversy.
Now, I've got this question, and Pseudo Sham just put it. Why? I mean, we didn't even discuss this yesterday because it happened during the show, and we were so taken aback with who was going. Why didn't Brew McCoy go instead of Amari?
Okay.
Give me a good answer.
Brew is a great leader, had no issues at Tennessee. There could be questions about his past if he went to SEC Media Days. So when he was
he had the legal issue at Southern California that was dropped. Again, I think this is you're going to have to answer these questions at some point. So why not answer it now on a smaller stage instead of right after you get drafted? I'm talking about Pearce as well. And you go to this big NFL draft table and millions and billions of people are watching you instead of little old SEC Media Days. I mean,
they're going to ask you anyway.
Right.
They're going to ask him at the NFL.
No, that's my point. But these are the training grounds to have the answers ready. It's not right after you get drafted and you're Laramie Tunsil smoking the ganja out of a big face mask bong. That's not the time.
Yes, that is very true.
That's not when you learn how to deal with the media.
It's not that, but Brew, you interviewed him on Sunday. He seems like he can deal with the media well. I just don't think Josh Heupel, because of the James Pearce issue, I don't think Josh Heupel wants those storylines out there right now. Look, here's the thing with Tennessee. Let's put this.
That's putting too much thought into it.
Well, okay, but
not
Dave,
by you, but by Josh.
But Dave, let's be fair here. Tennessee again. Nico Iamaleava, their star quarterback, was at the heart of taking down the NCAA earlier this year. Tennessee has generated a lot of smoke already. You know what you don't want? Two of your star players at going to SEC Media Days getting asked questions about their legal past. Dave, how many questions are they going to get asked already about taking down the NCAA? That's going to dominate Tennessee's coverage at SEC Media Days next week.
Do you think I don't know that. What would a player have to say about that?
Josh Heupel also speaks at SEC Media Days.
Right. I would ask Heupel about it, but he doesn't say anything. As a matter of fact, somebody that works in another media agency said, I'm not going to go to Dallas to listen to Josh Heupel say nothing for 90 minutes.
Imagine if Josh Heupel brought Nico Iamaleava, Brew McCoy, and James Pearce, though. You'd have Josh Heupel asked about that. You'd have Nico asked about that. You'd have James Pearce asked about his legal issue back in December. You could have Brew McCoy asked about his past. Okay? This is... There would be so much smoke there. Now, again, me and you as media guys, those are relevant stories. My vote would be those three to go. I get Cooper Mays going. Cooper's a great leader. Cooper's great, but we have Cooper on our show every week anyway. So I'd want Brew McCoy just because, again, they're just to mix it up. But there would be questions about their past that would be thrown in there. And I think that that's kind of a big issue. So now I will say this, and I'm going to say this in favor of Pearce too, this one little thing. I think more than there was under Philip Fulmer, I think there's a bit of a hostile relationship between the university football program and law enforcement in Knoxville, Dave, right now. And I don't think it's unfair because Tennessee saw
you think there's a good relationship or a bad relationship?
I think it's more hostile than it used to be because
right now I think it's really good.
Well,
at the current moment in time, and that's because they're winning.
Well, what I'm saying is there's a Knox County DA who put A.J. Johnson's NFL career on hold for 5 years because she wanted to bring a case that she knew she was going to lose in 30 minutes.
Well, I know you brought that up before. I just and by the way, somebody asked about the Pearce charges were dropped. With the fact that they got dropped early, a lot of Vols haven't gotten in trouble, which in the offseason, I'm sorry, most schools have players that get in trouble. I happen to think the relationship with the police right now is very good. Now, it might not have been good with A.J. Johnson, and it might not have been good when Josh Heupel shows up and they've had a decade worth of losers before him.
And Jeremy Banks is on the program when Josh Heupel shows up.
Yeah, but I think it's good now. I think on a scale of 1 to 10, at Phillips' best, he could call the individual police officer as an 11, and his worst, it was probably a 2 because they started the players started smarting off to cops, and at one point, Philip called out the police department in a press conference, which is not very wise, and that was bad. Heupel to me is somewhere right now around an 8. I think the police would rather let a player go if they can than take a player to jail because Tennessee is successful right now.
But then we're talking about the Knox County DA forcing Jalen McCullough to settle on an indictment that never should have been brought up last year. I mean, this guy pushed out somebody who was in his apartment and wouldn't leave.
Okay, now we're gonna have to agree to disagree on that. I think that's one person. But now this is a good point too. They don't want to talk about Brew's injury. Is that a factor?
I mean, Keenan Peely was hurt. He's going.
Yeah. Basically, every reason that you could come up with not to take Brew McCoy to SEC Media Days, some other Vol is going despite that reason to SEC Media Days.
Yes, and you can't even say the transfer thing because Hendon Hooker went 2 years ago to SEC Media Days, and he was a transfer. And heck, Joe Milton went last year. He was a transfer. So, I mean, you can't even use the transfer factor.
Keenan Peely's going this year. He's a transfer.
Yeah, that's right. Keenan Peely is going this year. I mean,
he's barely even a transfer because he's only played one game.
Josh Heupel made his SEC Media Days decisions based on how to avoid the most how to have the least controversy. And this comes back to the James Pearce thing. And this makes me suspicious of what actually happened with James Pearce and the law enforcement, is that they are being very cagey about it. Very cagey about it.
More than you know.
Yes.
I wish I could tell you everything right now.
They weren't cagey when the NCAA came after them over Nico. They went all out, right? They laid their cards on the table. They said, this is BS, and let us tell you what we're going to do, and we're going to take you out. And by golly, they did. And by the way, the Jalen McCullough situation, they kind of were upfront at that. They were like, look, they haven't brought any charges. We're going to play them. We don't care. We're going to play them.
Okay, now, post on the message board. Y'all forgot Brew had criminal charges before he came with that ex-girlfriend or whatever. No, we do remember that. Those were dropped. Okay, so, and they were very questionable based off the research I did. I don't want to get into I don't know what happened. I'm not going to play lawyer, but they were dropped. So you have to give him that credit. I will tell you from being around him, and I'm not great at reading everybody, but I'm pretty good at reading people. I think he's a fine, fine young man. I was blown away by his maturity level. I know kids are older now than they used to be because of COVID, but I was blown away. He was one of the more mature in 25 years. Caleb, I would say he was one of the more mature Tennessee football players that I've ever covered. Don Self at State Farm, he knows that you want a mature man like him to take care of your claims because everybody's shopping price nowadays. But when it comes down to it, if you save that money on the front end, you have a terrible claim experience. Was it really worth it? I don't think so. Go to donself.net, donself.net, or just call the number. It is 423-396-2126, 423-396-2126. That is in the greater Chattanooga area, donself.net. Mike Gundy had a very interesting way of defending one of his players, Caleb. He didn't scream his age out and about, but he did talk about how many times that he had been out drinking and driving. Mike Gundy, the mullet, what did he have to say in trying to defend one of his players?
This is one of the most bizarre things. So for those who don't know, Ollie Gordon got a DUI. Mike Gundy is not suspending him. He claimed on the ESPN Plus broadcast that Gordon blew a 0.1 blood alcohol content, which is narrowly above the 0.08 legal limit. He says that after looking up that metric, he said that could just be 2 or 3 beers. And then he said, I've probably been guilty of that 1,000 times. So basically, Mike Gundy just said, I've been drinking and driving. What's the big deal? Now,
may I ask you a question?
Sure.
You probably know as well as I do that if you drink 2 beers and you're a slim guy and I'm in fairly good shape, not when I'm up at my 3 weight, not when I'm 3 spins, but I can tell you that from buying the little tester for fun, that yes, you can be over 0.08 after 2 beers. And I bet you could, and I know I could when I was in shape. So I love to jump on Mike Gundy as much as anybody, but is he speaking the truth?
Mike Gundy said the absolute truth. He said the quiet part out loud. I mean, I'm not even going to deny that. He said the quiet part out loud, that so many people have done it. Where I have an issue with it, though, is this is the Mike Gundy that said, if you want to go after an athlete, one of my athletes, you go after one who doesn't do the right thing. You don't downgrade him because he does everything right and may not play as well on Saturday. And yes, I remember that 2007 press conference like yesterday. And I can actually quote it. Well, here is an athlete that didn't do the right thing in Ollie Gordon. Now, even if you want to say that it's widespread, just because something's widespread, just because I don't think somebody should have their career and their future ruined over something, and they shouldn't, just because some of us may have done some things, doesn't mean we don't think it should be illegal or shouldn't be illegal. Okay? I will just keep it quiet. But Dave, I'm sure there's some things you do that just because you did it doesn't mean you don't think it should be illegal. I've sped recklessly before.
Today?
No, just today in the like I have reckless. I have sped recklessly in the past. I've driven very fast. That doesn't mean I don't think there should be a speed limit. Okay, I shouldn't have done it. I was wrong, and had I gotten arrested at that time, I would have deserved it. Not arrested, but pulled over.
Good point by Kazuki, and I don't know what that name means, but Ollie Gordon should also be underage, so his BAC should be under 0.00. And
okay, well, that one I disagree with the law. You should be allowed to drink at 18. Sorry.
Yeah, but the law is a law. So
no, it's a law. You got to follow the law.
It's the law. I mean, it's the law. I mean, if you think about it, but first of all, I think that a DUI should be an automatic suspension. I don't care how minor it may view. I think that's an automatic 1-game suspension. I've said for a long time that the SEC should take over these suspensions because there's a conflict of interest with players. So to me, a DUI in and of itself is a 1-game suspension. A DUI involving any sort of traffic accident is a 3-game suspension. If you lay your hands on a woman, and it can be proven, we all know what may or may not have happened in the A.J. Johnson situation, but you're done with college football if there's any sort of Ray Rice incident where you know it happened. So I think the SEC needs to step in at some point, or the conferences or the NCAA or whatever it is, because I look at Mike Gundy and I can understand him trying to keep players on the team because he's got assistant coaches that are depending on him and that want to stay there. Caleb, I ask you this. Can you think of one coach that as a fan, you would least rather have his career than Mike Gundy, who has now coached at Ohio State for about a quarter of a century?
Oklahoma State.
A quarter of a century, does not have a national championship to show for it, has a terrible haircut, and has flirted with every college football team in the history of man. And now you're sitting there thinking he's knocking at the door. He's what Philip Fulmer would have been had Philip Fulmer not won it all in 98. Knock at the door, knock at the door, knock at the door. The dad blame door never opens. I mean, Mike Gundy, I don't want his career at all if I'm a fan.
But you can't compare Fulmer to Gundy in this situation. It's Oklahoma State. There's a ceiling. There's a ceiling.
That's fair. That's fair. There is a ceiling, but if somebody told me 25 years ago, you get 25 years of him screaming that he's 40, flirting with other schools and not winning a national title, wouldn't you say, I'm out? I do not want any part of that.
I mean, it depends on where if you're an Oklahoma State fan, though, wouldn't you? Like, this is the best you know. You may know this is the best you're going to get. Like, look, I said this with Tennessee basketball. Wouldn't you take 20 years of Tennessee basketball knocking on the door without a national title, given what you saw Tennessee basketball be in the 90s?
Okay, same argument. Why can't Oklahoma State be better than they are? They've got that major investor. What's his name? I can't remember his name.
He's dead now, T. Boone Pickens.
Well, yeah, but I'm sure he left a lot of money to somebody. But why can't Tennessee be better? They got a bunch of see, I never thought that was a good excuse that Don DeVoe used back in the 90s, that they didn't spend money on basketball. Why wouldn't you spend money on basketball? It's a revenue-producing sport.
Oh, I get spending money, but there's still certain ceilings that you're going to hit. My issue with Gundy is I just think he's a fraud in a lot of ways. And I don't mean his resume. I think he's a fake. Like, here's the thing. Mike Gundy's trying to be all real here. I'm just being honest with you guys. I'm Mike Gundy. I'm being honest. This happens. He's being honest with you when he's being honest with you when he wants an excuse to keep his player on the field. But in 2007, ask the quarterback that he was defending when he did that media rant. He thinks that whole thing was staged for recruiting purposes. I forget his name.
It felt like it. Let me ask the message board. Did you ever really want Mike Gundy through all of Tennessee's coaching hires? And I will tell you that as a guy who covered those hires and made phone calls for 20 hours out of a 24-hour day, he was never a real factor in the Tennessee job. That was him playing up the Tennessee job to get more money from Oklahoma State. So he was really barely on my radar, Caleb, early in the process. So I'm sure you probably know a little bit more about him. Is that somebody that Tennessee fans really kind of wanted, or thought that would be a good place to land?
In 2018, 17, 18, from moving on from Butch Jones, they really wanted him. The three that I think they were excited about after the Greg Schiano fire was nixed and they knew John Gruden wasn't coming were Mike Gundy, Jeff Brom, and Mike Leach. A lot of people want to win those three.
Brom, Leach, Gundy. Which would you rather have?
Oh, me personally?
Yes.
Jeff Brom. I think Jeff Brom's the best coach of those three.
I would take Brom. I would take Gundy, and then rest in peace, I would take the late Mike Leach.
I probably would too. I think Mike Leach, it's funny. People are like, oh, imagine what he could do with better offense, with better talent. But I'm like, I think because he runs such he runs a specific system, I think his offense always has a ceiling the same way it always has a floor, doesn't it? Like the ceiling is 10 wins, the floor is 6 wins. But you're never going to get outside of that window, basically. And so, yeah, I would take a Gundy or a Jeff Brom. But yes, no, they wanted him. Gundy's just, again, it fits where he is at Oklahoma State. But there have been a lot of, the other reason this is a red flag, there have been a lot of issues at Oklahoma State. Remember that whole story of scandals they had in 2015 that came out dating back to when Les Miles was there with the level of how they were buying players. I just think that there's a lot to not like about Mike Gundy. And I think if Nick Saban had said this, I probably would be more forgiving. Is that weird? Is that unfair to say, Dave? Like if Nick Saban said it,
you win 85,000 national championships, you can say a lot of things and sound a little bit different.
Also because I think Nick Saban develops people. I think he does. I know that's I hate to sound altruistic, but I think Nick Saban does to a certain degree like to develop. He cares about his players' futures to a certain degree. Is that weird to say? Fair? Is he one of the best people you know to have ever been a successful head coach, just as a human?
So I can't say just because he's so guarded. Man, I don't really know much about him. I mean, do you really know? I know that he eats 2 oatmeal pies for breakfast. I know that his favorite place to take recruits on a recruiting trip is the lake, by his lake house. Do you know anything else about him?
I know he's devoted and goes to mass every single Sunday in Tuscaloosa.
Do you know that?
And
I know he doesn't make an arse of himself on social media like guys at LSU and South Carolina.
I'm going to say this. I think most coaches just like athletes. I think when you're a coach, when you're on the road a lot, it's hard to always be faithful. If you ask me a question, I'm willing to bet Nick Saban has never ever steered from Terry, not once. I'm putting money on that.
I don't know nor care if he.
I'm saying, like
I will say this though: there are a lot of people out there, and Derek referenced it. There are a lot of people out there that believe that Nick Saban regularly paid players, that boosters regularly paid players.
So, I don't care.
You wouldn't argue with that.
No, I don't care if they're doing that at all.
Here's what I believe happened. Not any inside info. I'm just telling you what I think happened. It's the same thing that happened at UCLA with John Wooden. I can't remember the guy's name, but John Wooden had a really good assistant coach. He wasn't a really good assistant coach. He was a really good bag man. And that's why they got everybody they wanted for so long. Now, John Wooden didn't know anything about it. So that's what I think probably happened at Alabama. They got the Saban discount, but they still got some money, and Nick Saban didn't know anything about it. That's my theory.
My theory is Nick Saban took over. Nick Saban went to a prestigious program like Alabama with more credibility than any coach ever had gone to a prestigious program because of his success at LSU. And he recruited well at LSU because you wake up and get top 5 talent when you're at LSU.
Yes.
It's that simple.
Good Lord, you got a tiger as a mascot. That tells you something right there. Apex Apparel, they do more than just fancy, awesome shirts like this. Look at this Off the Hook Sports Polo shirt. If you call Tyler at 865-919-3001, 865-919-3001, he'll take care of you with unparalleled customer service. And you get 15% off your first order if you just mention Off the Hook Sports. Again, mention Off the Hook Sports. Support our sponsors. That's why we're here. The show represented by Banks and Jones. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker.
Wait, we still got wait. The Hendon Hooker Joe Milton camp. The Hendon Hooker Joe Milton camp.
I almost forgot the Hendon Hooker Joe Milton camp. All right, Hendon Hooker Joe Milton camping, and you have another conspiracy theory.
This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is just Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton have started a passing camp, like Manning Passing Academy now. It's in Bluff City, Tennessee. It's the Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton Youth Football Camp at Sullivan East High School in Bluff City, Tennessee, from 1 to 5 today. Here's my hot take. Nobody should send their kids to attend this camp. Nobody. These players, both of them, were developed under Josh Heupel. You don't learn the mechanics of playing quarterback under Josh Heupel. Honestly, you don't. What are Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton going to teach?
I think you learn a very limited set of technique and fundamentals that work in one system. So I think he knows how to coach quarterbacks. I think if you told him that he had to coach quarterbacks as good as Bill Walsh or any of those guys, I think he could do that, but I don't think that's the fit for his offense. So I see exactly what you're saying. Unless you're George McIntyre, you don't go to this camp because you're not going to learn things that you're going to go to other camps and coaches are going to be like, oh, wow, we got to take this guy. Somebody go tell Kirby about this dude. Look at his footwork. It's unbelievable. You're not going to get that from this camp at all. And that's fine. You can still win without having great footwork. But I don't think that's what you want your young son to be learning.
No, not at all. A few other layers
Kyle
here.
says he's on his way to camp right now. Now I feel terrible. Kyle, go to the camp, enjoy yourself. Tell Hendon I said hello.
And Smoky Mountain Red brings up a good point. It didn't seem to get a lot of advertising. And I didn't know about it until I went to Hendon Hooker's Instagram earlier this week. And I'm like, wait, they're doing a camp? Why has nobody talked about this? And it kind of threw me off. And I thought, do you think Heupel's trying to keep this idea under wraps too? Do you think he doesn't like this idea?
No, Caleb, he's not trying to do that. I just think that they didn't know what to expect. It's kind of like a soft open. Now, Heupel's not out there. Do you think Heupel has like a picket sign saying, don't camp with Hooker?
That's crazy. I didn't say he has that. So what do you make of this, though, those two coming together to hold a camp? I mean, that they did seem closer than a lot of starter backup quarterbacks have in previous years.
I think if Joe wants to continue to be relevant in the world of football, he needs to cling on to Hendon Hooker like it's the last lifeboat on the Titanic.
That's what this is about?
That's what I think this is exactly about. And in 5 years, when Hendon Hooker is still playing in the NFL and Joe Milton is not, you'll say, do you remember when you said that Titanic line? And I thought it was funny, but it's true. He stayed somewhat relevant for 3 or 4 years because he did these camps. And then it's just like, he's another dude.
Who would you rather be coached by, though? Do you think Hendon Hooker would actually coach kids better than Joe Milton?
Yes,
I mean, we know that.
Now, I will disagree with you here. I think Hendon Hooker will end up being a great quarterbacks coach. And Smoky Mountain Red, you're right, it'll put smiles on hundreds of kids' faces, which is well worth it. I think that Hendon Hooker wants to be a coach, that he will learn different kinds of offense, that he may be more of an NFL coach where he'll have to learn different styles of offense, and he won't rely on just this Josh Heupel type of offense in the college game. So I think that one day we're going to be talking about Hendon Hooker knocking on the door of being a head coach in the NFL.
That could be interesting. By the way, this is Flexwork Sports that's putting this on. And there will be other coaches there. I could see that happening. So maybe this is their focus. Maybe this is Hendon Hooker's long-term thought is maybe you're right. He wants to go down the path of a head coach. I'll say this.
And Joe was going to be in attendance because we got late word that Jeremy Banks wasn't available.
Oh my gosh. I can't
make it, but if I do, I'm going to beat your arse.
I can't speak to the right coaching mechanics and developing. As a head coach leading a program, though, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. There's very few people I'd want over Hendon Hooker. You're right. I think Hendon Hooker is the perfect type of leader, isn't he? For like as a player, but does that translate to head coach, to coaching? I mean, Michael Jordan was a great leader.
Yes, because I think he's an overachiever too. I think overachievers are the best head coaches. Like, look at the guy at the Lions now that he has as a head coach, Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell was just a big stiff that ran around for the Cowboys at tight end. He was not that great. I mean, he was not very good at all. And now he's an incredible coach who's never even been a coordinator. So I think Hendon Hooker will be that type of guy. And for those that think that he's too quiet because you've seen his public persona, I'm told that behind closed doors, he can be as loud as you need him to be.
Oh, he is. Again, I'm not saying he bullies like Michael Jordan did players, or even like how Peyton Manning did players, but I've heard he gets very hard on players once they're in between the chalk.
Yep.
And is very demanding of them.
Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia. They've got daily updates. Sports Treasures TN. Go to Sports Treasures TN. Crystal says Hooker replaces Heupel in 10 years at UT. Crystal, I thought about that, but I'm planning on retiring before I get that old. And TriStar hats, for the latest in TriStar hats, go to the original hats, apparel, and more. TriStar Hats Co. With a co. TriStarHatsCo.com. Yes.
So Hooker replaces Heupel in 10 years.
Me or the quarterback?
Oh, I got what you're saying there. Hooker replaces Heupel. I just caught that. Oh my gosh. Would you ever hire a former legendary coach to be at your school to be a head coach? Ever? Would you ever do that, Dave?
Maybe that's a discussion for tomorrow because I know where you stand on that.
I don't have as much of a problem with it as you do. I just know that it can hold you back in trying to fire them. But
yeah, Wisconsin still has that dude walking around. What's his name again?
Barry Alvarez?
Yeah, isn't he still walking around somewhere on campus?
He's the athletic director. That Barry Alvarez is the model Tennessee thought they had when they got Philip Fulmer and promoted him to athletic director. They thought they were getting the Barry Alvarez model.
I don't even know what to say about that. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave. If that's what they thought they were getting, they should have put their sights a little bit higher. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This is a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.